Regardless of what funnel you're using, I believe, and I have seen this time and time again, that people throw out and discard a sales funnel that they think doesn't work, but actually it had some really, really good promise. They just didn't know quite what to look for. I wonder if that's been your experience as well. You might go, well, John, I've got 50, 100 different things I could pay attention to. Which are the ones that actually move the needle in the data? There are just so many metrics and data points that you could look at. I tend to ignore almost all of it and I focus on. We cannot, and I must stress this, we cannot just look at a marketing funnel and say it either does or doesn't work. I want to save you today from making that mistake and potentially find the areas of that funnel that were absolutely beautiful. And there was something that was keeping the process stuck and not performing as a unit. So as far as I'm concerned, it's these 5 things. So if you've got notes, then prepare to write these down. The first is, hey, welcome back to the Expansion Podcast. And in today's episode, I'm going to give you something of the footnotes from a conversation that I had with a group of my momentum clients earlier on this week. We were talking about sales funnels, optimizing those sales funnels, squeezing them like lemons to get every bit of juice out of them to make sure that our businesses are as profitable as they can possibly be. And it sparked a conversation. There were some questions that came in, and I think the takeaways were pretty huge. And so I wanted to essentially take that conversation and put it into bite-sized pieces for you to go away with here today. So let's dive in. When you are first launching and creating a sales funnel, it doesn't really matter which one you're using. In my client groups, we typically talk about webinar funnels. I found that they work the best. We've talked about that numerous times here on the podcast before. But you might be using a VSL for whatever reason. You might be using a lead magnet that goes into some other sales process. Regardless of what funnel you're using, I believe, and I have seen this time and time again, that people throw out and discard a sales funnel that they think doesn't work, but actually it had some really, really good promise. They just didn't know quite what to look for. I wonder if that's been your experience as well. You've launched a sales funnel, you're really excited about it. Maybe you went through a coaching program, maybe you followed a course, maybe you watched a tutorial online, and maybe you just made it up. But however you got to this conclusion, you launched a funnel and you were feeling so good about it. You started to drive some traffic and it doesn't seem like it's working. And typically when we decide if something's working or not, at least someone who's not in the trenches, loves the marketing, a bit of a data nerd, typically we look at how much we spent to drive some traffic and then we look at how much we made out the other end. So you might look at a funnel that you're driving some paid traffic to, and you might say, well, I've spent $1,000 promoting this funnel and I've not landed one single client. This funnel clearly doesn't work. And that's the assessment that a lot of people make. I want to save you today from making that mistake and potentially find the areas of that funnel that were absolutely beautiful. They were perfect. And there was something that was keeping the process stuck and not performing as a unit. I call this bottlenecks. We have to look at a sales funnel and decide, where are the bottlenecks, or bottleneck singular, in this process, so that if I fix that bottleneck, everything else is flowing and working as it should. Now, to understand this and actually implement this, I want to share with you this concept that I shared with my clients called the 5 C's. There are a few things that you can look at in a marketing funnel, in a sales funnel, to determine if the data is pointing to a positive result, but you can sometimes get lost in the data. There are just so many metrics and data points that you could look at that you might go, well, John, I've got 50, 100 different things I could pay attention to. Which are the ones that actually move the needle and unblock these bottlenecks so that the flow of traffic can move through all the way to conversions? So as far as I'm concerned, it's these 5 things, 5 C's. So if you've got notes, then prepare to write these down. The first is clicks. The second is contacts. The third is consumption of some kind. The fourth is calls. And the fifth is closes. Now, this 5-step process assumes that the marketing funnel you're using is selling something higher ticket, so that we've got the calls in there. So you're booking sales appointments, and then you've got the closes, closing into high ticket. If you're not selling high ticket and you're selling mid ticket, then you can replace that fourth step, which is booking calls with whatever is most appropriate for you. So let's work through these 5 things, and I'll share with you why each of them are important to me over other data points as we go through. So the first is clicks. Now, when I'm driving traffic from my content, but in this example, I'm going to focus on paid traffic, so a YouTube ad or a Facebook ad, for example. When I'm driving traffic, I've paid some money for that traffic, and there's a few things happening on the ad platform. I'm targeting different audiences. I'm getting a different cost per 1,000 impressions. I'm getting a different cost per click. I'm getting a view through rate. I'm getting a video consumption rate. I'm getting a click through rate. There's all of these different data sets that I could be looking at. I tend to ignore almost all of it, and I focus on clicks. That's my first primary pillar piece of data that I look at. So why is that the case? Why do I not pay attention to some of these other things? Well, because quite frankly, if all of the other things were taking care of themselves, then I would be getting a decent amount of clicks for a decent price. So as long as I'm getting a decent amount of clicks into my sales funnel for a decent marketing cost, then I don't need to concern myself with the stuff below it. And then as we work through the other 4 C's, the idea is once we understand this, we're able to then look at one of those 5 core pillars, see which one is the issue, then we go into the micro. So we look at the macro first, then we decide where our attention needs to be, then we go into the micro. So we'll come back to clicks in just a moment. The second is contacts. So we're getting some clicks into our sales funnel, and presumably there's some kind of opt-in as a first step. So you're generating leads. They're opting in for something, be it a webinar, VSL, challenge, or otherwise. So we need to then assess how many of the people that are clicking through to my funnel are opting in and becoming a contact. Again, it's one of the most important metrics within a marketing funnel. How many people that land on this page actually like what I'm saying on it and want more, so they opt in through that front door. So that's number 2, contacts. The third is consumption. Now, for me using webinars, this is easier to determine because I can see of people that registered for a webinar, how many of them actually attended the webinar presentation, i.e. consumed the content. Because sometimes people will register for something, but then they won't show up. And so they're not then consuming the content within the funnel. So consumption is really, really important. If you're using something like a VSL or another type of funnel, then you might want to look at different tools that can show you how many people view a certain percentage of your VSL to determine if you've got some significant drop off at any particular part. But for me, I love webinars, and it's just really easy to determine using an attendee percentage rate. You know, how many people registered actually showed up. Then, of course, we move to booking calls. So we've got our consumption rate, and if that's looking good, then it's how many people that consumed the content in the funnel, how many of them booked a call. Because if that is a good percentage, then my content is doing its job. If it's a bad percentage, then my content is no good and needs fixing. So then, of course, once we've got a good amount of people booking calls, then it's how many of them are closing, right? How many of the people that are on my calendar that I'm due to speak to and have now spoken to are becoming clients? Is it a positive percentage, i.e. I'm doing a good job on the phone speaking to prospects, or is it really, really low and I'm doing a bad job there as well? So now that we understand these 5 C's, we cannot, and I must stress this, we cannot just look at a marketing funnel and say it either does or doesn't work. That's actually not fair. It's not fair to all the different elements in the process. You might find some of those things are actually performing really, really well. It's that there's a bottleneck in one of them. It might also be that some of the elements in the funnel haven't had a chance to prove themselves yet, so therefore we can't blame them for the process. Let's use an example and start right back at the beginning. We turn on some traffic and we've spent a bit of money and we've not landed a client. We would have typically in the past said, funnel's not working, let's ditch it and build something brand new. But instead, what are we going to do? We're going to find where the bottleneck is. So we might find that it's right at the very beginning. We look at how much we spent. We look at the fact we haven't got a client, but then we look at how many clicks we got into the funnel, and we determine that we haven't had many. So we spent $500 on some paid ads and we got 4 clicks. Well, then no wonder the process isn't working right now, because you only had 4 potential people that could have even come to the page and maybe opted in. There's almost no way you'd get 4 people going through this entire process and one of them becoming a client. It's not a big enough sample size. We would have needed a few more people. So what does this tell us? It tells us that we need to fix the ads, the message, the hook, the copy, the design, the video, whatever you're using for traffic is currently not working because you're not getting people that are seeing your ads to want to click. What else are we learning? We're learning that the webinar is not the problem yet. We haven't had a chance to determine if the presentation is good or bad because not enough people have even seen it yet. We've also learned that there's nothing wrong with our ability to close on the phone yet because we haven't even taken any calls. We've also learned that there's nothing wrong with the landing page because we haven't had a large enough sample size to determine if the opt-in rate is where it needs to be. So then what is our operation? What is our goal? It's to now work on the traffic or the traffic source to produce a better message to market match so that we can actually get more clicks. If and when we achieve more clicks, now we might find that the bottleneck is at the contacts. We're getting loads of people clicking from the ad and coming onto the landing page, but not enough of them are becoming contacts. We have now driven 100 clicks to our landing page and we've had 7 people opting in. We learn exactly the same thing. We learn these 2 things. We learn number 1, this is the bottleneck. It's the landing page now. The traffic is working. We're getting clicks, but people are not opting in. That's where they're getting stuck. We must fix this opt-in page. We need to try different headlines. We need to try different angles, new designs to fix that registration page. And we've also learned the other thing, which is that there's nothing wrong with the webinar yet. The webinar hasn't had a chance to prove itself. Therefore, we're not going to blame the webinar just yet. And so on we go. We then look at consumption. Is there an issue with consumption? People are registering, but not enough of them are showing up. Is there an issue with the call booking rate? Are we getting loads of people watching the webinar, but no one's booking calls? Then we know we need to change the content in the webinar, but the ads are good. The registration process is good. We're getting them on the line, but they're just not booking calls. We must change the webinar presentation. Of course, that goes all the way to the very end, which is if you're getting people booking on your calendar and they are not closing, then it's most likely that you just need more training, more supervision, more accountability, and more support to get better having those conversations, to start turning some of those no's into yeses if they could have been and they were good potential clients for you. So I said I'd give you, once I share the 5 C's, I said I'd give you an example, and here it comes. We had a funnel on not too long ago. In fact, it's still on, but I've changed it now, which was a lead magnet. So we go traffic source to opting in for a lead magnet, not a webinar this time. That's a story for another episode, but testing out a different funnel. And so they opt in for a lead magnet. Once they opt in for a lead magnet, they go to a sales page to buy something for $27. Once they buy something for $27, there's an order bump, which means they can tick a box and add something else to their order. And then there's a series of pages where they can buy something else. They can add something onto their order. This is a pretty standard, pretty typical marketing funnel. It's one that I wanted to experiment with and just see how it compares to the results from my webinar funnel. I really struggled to find any marketing funnel that beats my webinars, but I'm always up for testing new things. And so we were trying something new. Right. We drove a bunch of traffic into this funnel. We were optimizing the front end, meaning we're just tweaking the messaging, we're trying different ads, and we're optimizing it and getting it to where it needs to be. And where we landed was as follows. Traffic, tick, it's working great. We're getting clicks, awesome. We're getting contacts, awesome. And in fact, we're getting them for a really decent rate. We are buying leads very, very cheaply, and they're really good quality leads once they're on our email list. So where was the bottleneck? It was on the next step. When they go to that page where they can buy something for $27, we were just not getting the conversion rate we needed on that page to make the process work and work well. And it was so far from where it needed to be, which meant we were running at a negative on this funnel, and quite considerably so. So I said to my team, okay, there's a couple of things going on. Number 1, we can't blame the upsells yet. We haven't had enough people coming through that sales page front door to start blaming the upsells for not performing, because they haven't even had a chance to perform. So we can't blame that on that side. We also are really happy with the front end. Got some great traffic coming in. We're getting some great leads coming in. So the bottleneck is clear. It's right here at that initial sales page. So now we have to determine, is it just that there's some cracks emerging and we can put in a bit of filler? Or is it that this needs a complete overhaul? And in this scenario, it was the results are so far from what they would need to be that we're too far away from tweaks. We need to completely give this an overhaul. And so what I decided to do, I took a funnel that we could have just turned off because it wasn't profitable. Instead, I looked and found the bottleneck, and then I looked for a solution, and that was to keep that front end on. But once they opt in, to go in a different direction and go along a proven sales path that we've used in the past that works really, really well. So I basically cut off the $27 sales page. I cut off the one-time offers. And when someone opts in for the lead magnet, they now go to a page that says, hey, thanks so much for grabbing access to this amazing resource. This is one piece of a bigger puzzle, and I want to give you the entire puzzle and all the pieces and the map to put it together. So I'm hosting you guessed it, webinar presentation. I'm going to go ahead and break everything down for you. I'd love for you to register for that. Join me on the webinar. Now this is me talking back to you now, I've got a webinar presentation that just crushes it. Works really well, has done for years, and I've made millions and millions with webinars. So I tested a new funnel, found a part of it that's working. So now I've just put the two together. I was only able to do that and identify that and find this incredible solution because I understand the idea of looking for bottlenecks and fixing those, as opposed to just looking at a funnel as a whole and giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So anyway, hopefully that has helped you. That is a whistle-stop tour of some of the stuff that we covered inside Momentum. And by the way, shameless plug. I mean, if this is the type of stuff that you love talking about, geeking out on, want to go deeper on, then I'd love for you to apply for my Momentum coaching. We open up periodically in little mini cohorts, and I'm sure there's a page or a link somewhere around here you can get some more information, and I'd love to connect with you on that. And also, I'd love to see you in a future episode of the Expansion Podcast. Take care.